Barry Allen has been the Flash and a member of the Justice League for a little while now, and is a much more experienced superhero than when we last saw him in the Justice League. He has a new costume and is much more confident, even though he knows he is called when none of the other Leaguers are available. Because this is not a sequel to Zack Snyder's Justice League and is actually a sequel to Joss Whedon's Justice League, the Flash is shocked when he accidentally discovers he can go back in time. Because of that, he decides to go back in time to save his mother from being murdered. When he actually does it, he accidentally screws up the timeline and everything is somehow different. Somehow, Affleck's Batman is now Keaton's Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Superman are nowhere to be found, and Cyborg has not become Cyborg yet. To make things worse, he arrived at the time when Zod first appeared on Earth. Without Superman around, it is up to him, the new timeline's Barry Allen, Keaton's Batman, and Supergirl to stop Zod and fix the timeline. The good. I am a DC guy through and through, but I went in expecting to be disappointed on some level. After all, Shazam 2, The Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman 84, and Birds of Prey, they all kinda suck compared to what they should have been. And Black Adam was mediocre at best. But I have to say this movie was great. I loved it. This is very much a Flashpoint movie. Anyone that knows the comic event or has seen the animated movie knows how great this story is. But I was hesitant at first since they replaced the weak and frail Superman with Supergirl just to avoid hiring Henry Cavill again. And they replaced Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Batman with Michael Keaton's. I was very weary of both of these changes, but I also knew WB wanted a lighter tone approach for DC going forward. They want DC to be Marvel and not stand on their own merit. DC's comics and pantheon is superior to Marvel's in every way in my opinion, but WB fails to see that and simply wants to mimic Marvel on every level. But because of that, the removal of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Batman actually works. His Thomas Wayne Batman would have made the film very dark and humorless. Don't get me wrong, I would still love to see that version because I love the Thomas Wayne Batman character. But I do also love Michael Keaton as an actor, and I think for a lighter tone DC universe, his Batman worked better. It also united various generations of audiences into one film. The change from Superman to Supergirl, that wasn't bad either. Sasha Calle did a great job and her existence didn't detract from Superman, but the drama behind the scenes leading to her casting still bothers me. But I can't hold that against her. She did great, and I loved the scenes with her and Michael Shannon together. I'm not an Ezra Miller fan, but the tone works very well for a Flash film, and I love what he did in the film. He brought Barry Allen to life and gave us a Flash film that made you want a sequel today. And of course, it was great to see Ben Affleck as Batman and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman once again. Although I wasn't too fond of Affleck's Batman suit design, but just seeing him on screen again as Batman was great. And there's a scene in this movie that has Batman fighting in a missile silo, and I have to say the fight sequence is almost as good as the warehouse sequence in Batman vs. Superman. And there's one final surprise that I thought was such a fantastic addition. It's not the one most people are probably thinking about, but you'll know it when you see it, especially when you see the big spider. The bad. First off, the VFX were very inconsistent. Some moments it looked fantastic and others it looked very cheap. Now to be fair, I saw this at an early showing and they made it clear that this was not the final cut. They did not specify if new scenes were being added or some were being removed or if the VFX were still being rendered. If they are, then this complaint might not even apply. This movie and DC's new approach is supposed to be more lighthearted and comedic, which makes perfect sense for The Flash, but I feel they may have overdone some of the comedy. For example, there is a scene where the Barry Allen we know meets the new timeline's Barry Allen's roommates, and the scene felt so out of place and forced, I can only hope they edit that out for the final version. But if this approach is how they plan to do the rest of DC, then it won't work at all. It works well for Flash, but it wouldn't for a solo Batman film. But with Gunn in charge going forward, it'll probably be just a bunch of stupid potty jokes anyway. I also think it was a huge missed opportunity not to include Grant Gustin from CW's Flash series. Ezra Miller appeared in the CW series during the Crisis event, and I think returning that opportunity to Grant Gustin would have been a great move. It would have solidified the multiverse concept for audiences while giving a great cameo and showing the world that the movie Flash and the series Flash can coexist. It was a bad choice by WB, but it's WB, so of course they dropped the ball. Overall, this movie was great. This showed exactly what a DC film can really be, but it also depressed me quite a bit. After Aquaman, this universe is over now, just like that. Audiences have been thrown aside and left abandoned after years of following and are now expected to just get over it and just get on board with James Gunn. No closure anywhere. No rebuilding of fan faith, just move on. If WB had actually stuck to the original plan, this film would have been the final movie that switched Zack Snyder's DC vision to Jeff Johns' vision. We would have all 5 Snyder films, we would have an actual ending and closure making Snyder fans happy, then organically transition to John's version when The Flash reset the timeline. I'm gonna get into the whole DCEU, Zack Snyder, Jeff Johns drama in detail in an upcoming video, but it all really pisses me off. At the end of the day, everyone is a victim of WB. WB screwed over both Jeff Johns and Zack Snyder. Unlike many people out there, I am actually a fan of both. They have very different visions, but they both can work. DC is a multiverse after all. Let's save any Snyder versus Johns comments for later when I make a video about all that, but Snyder's vision was meant to be a 5-film, self-contained story that ended, and not constantly expanding like Marvel. It works just like DC's Gotham by Gaslight, Deceased, or Kingdom Come storylines. That's why I don't understand some of the DC fans' hate for it. DC is a multiverse. Why don't people understand that? After Snyder, it was supposed to transition to Jeff Johns' vision, but he was handed films after Kevin Tsutsujara wanted to alter them all, and they made these films, and he was just told to fix them. Movies that were already shot. He had to do rewrites on existing footage. This put his vision at a huge disadvantage, but a DC universe he built from the ground up would have been great. After all, he gave DC Comics a second golden age in my opinion. Not to mention, the Aquaman and the Flash films are both based on his stories, and they are both great films. Now, WB may have victimized Johns and Snyder, but at the end of the day, the fans are the greatest victims. WB's constant meddling victimized both Snyder and Johns and caused audiences to get a Frankenstein version of both, and it just did not work. This polarized the fan base, which basically ended up putting them at war with one another. So now we don't get closure on Snyder's take, we never get to see John's take at all, and even though now we have a great Flash film, now we're forced to just start all over with James Gunn take, and we're supposed to just ignore what they did to everyone. What arrogance, that really pisses me off. How do we know that once a Gunn movie underperforms, they won't just abandon his plans too? We don't, because that's what WB does. Every other movie, it's, oh, we'll change directions. They never have faith in the franchise as a whole the way Marvel does. I have zero faith in WB at this point, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I mean, after all, WB has been the thorn in DC Comics' side since the 80s. That's why there's a second cut of Superman 2, the Donner cut, because they'd pulled the same crap forever. WB needs to convince us why we should get involved again, and you know what? The Flash would have been a great reason. Too bad it's all over, and WB is just killing off that universe. But The Flash was a fantastic film, and I highly suggest everyone who loves DC or The Flash go see this film. Great. WB always gets an F when it comes to DC, but this film was great. I give it an A- or 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for future content.